Howdy, howdy, everyone. Well, by everyone, I mean no one currently, but that's okay. I expect people to be here when I've only literally just begun streaming. This is simply a practice for me because I need to get better at conversing while I'm doing things. You can see that I'm not very good. So I'm going to be attempting to just show you my everyday programming. I'm literally right in the middle of just fixing bugs. There are compiler errors. There are build script, build configuration errors, and I'm just working through them, taking a very steady approach, working through it in a intentional way. And I'm realizing right now that my ability to listen to music and talk is inhibiting this. So I'm just going to switch this off. This is great, by the way. If you haven't heard of Tommy Prophet, he's a great artist. He's very, I feel like he's the trailer guy. His songs are incredible, but he's got a Christmas concert that I couldn't unfortunately go to this year. I couldn't go to anymore, but that's a story, not for you. And the story you want to see is why my code is not compiling. Maybe you just came in here because I had AuDHD, DHD in the title, and you have that too, and you're just thinking, oh, well, I'm a programmer. I have that condition as well, or I relate to that in some way. You're just curious. Who knows? Here I am. So, where are we? I've got a big to-do list. I'll show you. This is my to-do list. What is this app at all? Well, this is a application a potential interviewer, an employee gave me and said, please just add something simple to this. Well, I did not do that. I'm not a simple person, but mostly because the code base was 10 years old. It was using idioms and patterns that were outdated and backwards to a degree from what the current market will know. So I wasn't confident to do that. And because my front end is not as great as my back end, I was hoping to take it as an opportunity to learn. So that's what I'm doing. I'm learning about the intricacies of React, some of the frameworks that I haven't used before and I'm interested in using, such as WebSockets. I've gone to and fro between just the standard WebSocket implementation and Socket.io, but I've gone back to Socket.io because of the ability to generate async API documentation, which I want to become more familiar with as well, because that is driving the web these days with a lot of microservices out there and a lot of asynchronous message-based or event-based systems. I need to know about the standards that govern the contracts between these things. So Open API is the contract for pull. Async API is the contract for events and messages. They're two standards that have gained a lot of popularity. There are other standards out there for describing the contracts between systems. There's the protobuf contract system. I don't know if they have an asynchronous variant of their stuff, but they also have a protocol of their own that governs the transport, the gRPC protocol, and that serializes things in a very efficient manner. But I haven't touched that for a while. I've mostly been using REST APIs. One of the things that I want to tone down in is the complexity of the things I build. Things are far too complex these days. I just watched a video on Theo GG who's commenting on the same matter. The software we're using is generally getting poorer and poorer. And I don't think that's because of bad engineers, or maybe to a degree if you think that that's their responsibility. But I think it's because we are expecting more and more of applications and software as a whole. And that means that simple things like this tic-tac-toe game that I'm working on currently is far beyond the complexity of what it really needs to be, because it's creating, well, I've made it that way, uh, admittedly to an extent, because I am trying to learn the tools. So I'm contriving scenarios in which those tools would be useful in this instance. But the point still stands, projects are becoming quite complex. So let's get straight to it. Let's try to tackle one of these things. So project references. Right now, what I'm trying to do is set up Vitest. Vitest is for the most part, 95% drop-in replacement of Jest. There are a few differences. But one thing I do get annoyed at is having to specify the imports for all the describes. Writing test is a slog to begin with, and I need as little barrier to entry as possible given my ADD, because I need to, when I think of the test cases, I just want to write the test. I don't want to fluff around with imports. This is one less menial task, and really people are very much used to these directives these days anyway. Well, I believe so. If you haven't done sort of behavioral driven tests before, these may look new to you, describe and expect and it and whatnot, but for the most part, people are familiar with the structure of how a test file looks. It doesn't take much to be able to decipher what's happening here. If I say before all, you could probably guess what before all is doing, and furthermore, you can probably guess the scope of it too. Being inside this described, it's probably referring to everything inside this functional closure, which that's exactly what it does. So I don't know. I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that I'm lazy about importing the variables and the functions from Vitest directly. Another thing is that I need to limit myself on the effort that I place into non-functional requirements like this, especially ones that are nice to have, quality of life. That's something that will improve your general knowledge of a system, figuring out why this, when it's a global property in my TS config, isn't being picked up by IntelliJ maybe, or by my application, is something that will improve my knowledge for future wrangling of the TS configs. But it's not necessary. It is not necessary. I put the emphasis on a strange syllable there. I could just simply opt in to doing this. It does mean that future migrations from Jest are a little more arduous, because you have to go through to each test file, and if there's lots of tests, you need to import all the different describe, expect, before, all those Jest related functions into the Vitest, or import them from Vitest instead. And that can be a barrier to some people migrating over. The tooling is very important here as well. As someone with maybe a little touch of OCD, I find myself frustrated when I know that there's something that's available to the test runner, but my IDE says it isn't. And figuring out why helps me pedagogically for the sake of learning. So let's try just for a little bit to get this running. Now, my TS config is as per the recommendation of the TS page. Let's go to this to tell you what I mean. References, documentation. Now, this is an example which separates the source and test folders, but I like to keep my tests as close to the actual source code that I can. It just gives greater visibility to what's tested, what's not tested, rather than marrying up two separate folders. There are IDE plugins, at least for Java world, where you can simply say, I want to go to test. But I don't think JavaScript has this feature, which is unfortunate, because then you could, if you're relying on the tools, you could theoretically keep tests in a separate page, but I like to keep them together, and which is why I have simply excluded the test files from my source and included them in the TS config in test. Now, the main difference between include and exclude is that include, you need to specify the folder as well as anything underneath it. And in exclude, it's relative to any of the include files. So I've referenced in my base config that both of these extent include everything in source. So these excludes will only reference the includes in here. So why do I have node and dist? Because I have a files directory, which means that the include, because there's a file that's not in that source folder, it will pull the root directory above it. And now the root directory suddenly contains other folders that may have TypeScript, and I need to exclude them. At least that's my understanding to a 90% confidence. What actually is happening may be different and might be reason as to why my program is bugging out when I try to build it. So when you want to build a project with the new project references, you need to do -B or /build. It tells it to read from there. But now I'm getting a lot of problems from node modules folder. So why is that? I need to know. This is telling me, I think, a misleading thing. It's saying get types jest or mocha. This is from game spec. So this is still here. Now, my first idea was maybe it didn't build the outputs actually. Okay, so when you Google this, you have some suggestions. So one of them is you need to include the types, the globals, the Vitest globals, and then it will know that you're referring to that those types are available to the compiler when you're reading the test files. There's a couple of assumptions I want to check too. So let's make those assumptions clear. I don't know if I want to put this in the to-do. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but it's less files to wrangle in my brain. So this is what I'm going to do. Let's make a section called investigations. And then this section is config. So my assumption is that the compiler options types build makes modules available to the build, to the compiler. AKA as globally available. That's the key here. My assumption is that types make it globally available to the compiler, so you don't have to explicitly define an import for that module. It will exist. However, something's off. So I'm going to try this by referencing the tsconfig directly. Okay. Cannot find a scribe. So there's an error in my assumptions there. So let's go to the reference. Compiler options, types. What does types actually do? All visible types package are included in your compilation. If types is specified, only packages listed will be included in the global scope. For instance, and this has an example of jest. This TS file, this config will only include at types node, at types jest, and that. Okay, so what happens when it's not? By default, all visible types package are included in compilation. By included, does that mean global? Okay. There's another assumption. We'll label this section assumptions. This module has the describe, etc. functions. So this is partially true. And we'll reference this. Let's double check that you can see what I'm doing. Yes, you can. Will not add globals to your project. When you have this option set, okay, I have it set. By not including a module in the types array, it will not add globals to your project. Will not have export appear as auto import recommendations. When you have this option set, by not including a module in the types array, it won't add globals to your project, will not have exports appear as auto import recommendations. Okay, I think I know what this is saying. So for all regular at type modules, normal imports will not suggest auto import. It's a better, more prominent thing to say about this. For all regular type modules, importing the objects and types referred by them will give auto completion. That's important to know. For all modules listed in types attribute, each module will be globally available to your included files. So I think that's the main difference, the main takeaway from this. So in other words, I think we can say that this, let's get a Unicode tick, have a Unicode tick check mark and cross handy. I think it's useful. Check mark. Let's see. Okay, thank you. Tick. I'll make this a bit bigger. So I have a feeling some of you would appreciate that. I do have a pretty big screen, so the coding might look a little small for some of you. I wonder if IntelliJ can provide a Discord overlay. That would be interesting. I'm off on a tangent here. Let's find a Unicode X. Yeah. That's a good X. Okay, now let's check out this module. Can we open up the modules directly? We'll find you. We'll find you here. Hey, globals. Globals has the types. Declare global. Let's sweep. Okay. Okay. So what's happening, sir? Excuse me, sir. Code, please. I include this. What's going to happen? Will I find okay. Clean? Let's try again. Nope. This has still got a problem. Why? Why, sir? Is it because I need to also include everything. I do this. Is it going to? No. I think this got me frustrated a while ago. Okay. So this module, if it's importing this, then it's making that file globally available. And would you look at that? This is included. Why? Why can't I see it? I thought there was no vi test. If any of these have a lead, is it because I can't import TS files? Surely that's not the case. Let's do a test. I allow this. Is it now going to let me import this? But see, that shouldn't be the case. I'm already importing TS files through this include statement. So surely that has not much to do with. Look, now there's two errors. Can be used when no omit or omit declaration only. Yeah, like I thought. Go away, chew. This has a references as well, which is interesting. He has type roots set, and I don't have type roots set. What does he have it set to? Oh, maybe this affects the type roots, potentially. Is that it? Can't see type roots set anywhere. Interesting. How is type roots affected? Ah, you might be onto something. Packages with at types, blah, blah, at types, blah, 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 at types, etc. That's same to this. Type roots is specified. Only packages under type roots will be included.
I think uh think I think we're good. I think so. I'm finally talking. This is embarrassing, but good. Checking out the stream. Can't hear anything on the stream though, so hello, hello. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Can I hear myself? Hey, I heard myself. Oh well, you learn. Eventually, you learn, right? Eventually, this millennial will know how to wrangle the computer after several decades being a professional in this industry. I'm still learning, especially when it comes to streaming. Hmm.
No. Okay. This is odd. I'm not sure what's happening. Okay. I did this. What if I did this? Hello, hello, hello. Hello? Hello, hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello. This is so weird.
Victory.